Davey, a tweet that interests you or two?
Yeah, Elaine Ruth White asks this question, which I found really helpful. Is a poet confined by responding to a previous moment in the tradition of their own culture, or is it acceptable for a poet from another culture to respond, for example, an Irish poet responding to Whitman or Dickinson? Which I found to be a really wonderful and useful question, and in dialogue with a conversation that T and I were having in the Twitter feed for the last webcast. I'm trying to think about what is the transnational reception of American poetry? What are the ways, productive and unproductive, absorbed and refused, that American poetry reappears in and is in dialogue with transnational Anglophone literary traditions?
Yeah, in that context, I just want to point out that in ModPo Plus, we don't have a video yet of it, but we are going to do one soon. So Tom Leonard, this radical anarchist, pacifist anarchist Scottish poet, wrote not too long ago, like in 2007 or 8, he wrote a poem that is a rejoinder to Williams' This Is Just to Say. It's called Just to Let You Know. I am not good at braid Scots. I am bad at braid Scots. But the very first CCCR, collaborative close reading, community collaborative close reading video that was made in November of 2012 by 3 poet/poet friends in Edinburgh. They got together at one of their houses. They sat around a kitchen table. Sean Donnelly convened them. And they did a ModPo copycat video. This was the first time that had happened. We didn't even know enough about what the hell we were doing with this MOOC to know what that would mean. At first I thought, that's not very nice. This is, like, we did this. Are they copying it? And then I realized what they were doing was they were telling us that Williams and ModPo are great, but that they have something to say in a language that they would not say is English, right? And they insisted, and they do it in a very friendly way. In fact, I've kind of by email interviewed all 3 of them to rethink what they were to just ask them what they think about it now. And they thought they were basically applauding ModPo. If you look at that video, you will see what they're saying is basically that Williams is to the American languages to ModPo as Leonard is to braid Scot, or to the Scottish language, the Scottish version of English, sorry to use that phrase, is to a version of ModPo that they were offering, which was a radical Scottish version of it. And the poem itself is not about taking a plum. It's about a Tom Leonard figure lying around on a couch on a day when there's going to be a party, taking the specials, the beer, the Scottish beer, that you were apparently saving for the party, and drinking the beer in advance. It has the same dynamic. And I won't do the braid Scott, but it seems to me germane to the question that Davey and T have been talking about, which is, we are studying the American, in this case of Carlos Williams, we are studying the American language. We're focusing on American, US concerns, and to some degree North American concerns. But there are Englishes, plural, out there. Those spoken in countries where, like the Philippines, where English is not the primary language, and in countries like Scotland, where the word English to describe the language is refused, yet the poetic tradition is the same. I can't do this accent, but I'll try. Just to let you know, I've drunk the specials that were in the fridge, and that you're probably holding back for the party. All right, they were great, that strong, that cold. That, to me, raises fundamental questions, Davey, about what we're doing here. We cannot operate in isolation, even from the Englishes that are out there. Quick comment in response to any of that, Davey, and then we'll move on.
Yeah, and we can't also operate in isolation from the fact that all of the work that we're teaching is necessarily implicated in systems of power, whether those are systems of power that are located in an American context or part of colonial and neo-colonial legacies, and trying to think about how is experimental poetry often a refusal of, a refutation of language being used to control. We'll get to that with the language poets very explicitly. But then also, what does it look like to be writing poetry that refuses systems of power in a language that's often a language of marshaling or abusing power?
And in the instance that I just gave, we get it this way.
Yeah.
The hegemony of English, British English, overwhelming Scotland, so that you get poets like Robert Burns are saying, no, that's not our English, right? And there are lots of Scottish writers who decide to write in English.
Yeah.
Scottish nationalism is a radicalism, unlike in other countries.
Sure.
Okay, when you respond to Williams by saying the hegemony of modernism, this is just to say, is a hegemony that the Americans can say they don't participate in because the colonialism is coming from England.
Yeah.
But by having Anglo-American modernism, even Williams, who's like Mr. American speech, is participating in that hegemony. So Leonard is beautifully triangulating English, British English, and American English, and saying you can't claim to escape that, Bill Williams, and yet I'm going to do it. And what those three mod poets were saying in a very gentle way is, be aware that those kinds of colonial triangulations are going to happen with English, even with cool experimental modernism. And that's even aside from the critique that Lily and others put on that poem, which is you took the plums that Flossie was saving, and Tom Leonard is talking about someone taking the beer that presumably his partner went out and bought, and now he's drunk it, and we have to go out and get some more, and guess who's going to have to do it? Okay. Well, thank you. That was great.